In this video, I show you how I sharpen some snake cutting bits to significantly increase the cutting capacity of a standard, more consumer grade type of snake machine. This is a Ridgid K400, I think. It's not meant for cutting roots. It's meant for just clearing blockages in pipes. But when you sharpen these, it's actually able to cut some fairly thick roots. I haven't found any roots that it can't cut. In this video, all I'm going to be using is a rotary tool. The brand doesn't matter. It's just a standard rotary tool, as well as a standard cutting disc. These are the Dremel brands, but they're the normal thickness, not the super thin ones. And these will work fine. So to sharpen these, here's several blades that have different type of tooth profiles. So I'm just going to go over how I sharpened them. It's all basically the same principle. Here's a double-edged one where it has teeth on both sides of it. The main point is to get the blade and sharpen the inside similar to a chainsaw blade. Right here, this is the part that you want to get sharp so that when it's spinning like this, it's cutting it cleanly on this edge right here. So all you need to do is get the blade and come in at an angle like this and turn it on, and then just be very careful to create the profile on this tooth. So I would come in at an angle, and the top of the blade is just barely above the this portion of the blade of the top part of the tooth next to it, but not touching it. And I'm coming in and just very lightly touching along this side of the tooth to create that profile. And looking at it from above, I'm not directly in line with it, because then it wouldn't be a sharp edge. I'm coming in slightly like this, and then going up and down, making sure not to overcut it. And here's a better close-up of what the blade or the tooth profile looks like. You'd see there's the sharp edge right there. And each tooth takes about probably a minute to get right. You just want to make sure that you don't overfile it. And then same thing, just flip it on the other side and do the same thing to these teeth right here. Here's a C-type cutter. It's basically the same principle, except I sharpened both sides of it, since this spins like this, where both sides of the tooth will be cutting. So I took the blade, and so for instance on this tooth, I came in like this, just went up and down to sharpen it, and then flip it around the other way to get the other side of the tooth, like that. And here's a close-up of what the teeth look like. You see both sides of the tooth are sharpened, so they almost looks like shark teeth. That way, when it comes in spinning like this, both sides of the tooth are cutting at the same time to really clean out the pipe and cut any roots. Here's this next time. This is a single side, but this is also a spiral cutter like that first blade. And this is the same principle, where I'm only cutting on the inside, similar to a chainsaw blade profile. So same thing with that profile. Only one side of the tooth is sharpened. And lastly, this is probably the first bit I use if the line is completely blocked. And similar to the C cutter, I sharpen both sides of the tooth like that. That way, when this comes in spinning like this, it's able to use both sides of the tooth to really cut and clean. And this is to start a boring hole so that the next size spiral cutter can fit. Otherwise, it's hard to get a spiral cutter in if the line's completely blocked. But this will bore right through it like this and create a nice clean hole. So that is pretty much it. This is how I sharpened all of my cutter bits for a snake machine to significantly increase the capacity of a the lower end consumer line of snake cutters, such as the K400 from Ridgid. But this has been able to cut basically all the roots. I'm going to show a few pictures of the roots I was able to cut. This is in a pipe where the roots had basically completely filled it, the entire diameter of a 4-inch pipe, and I was able to cut it all through by starting at the very smallest cutter bit and then working up in each size. The cutters I have go up in about 1/2-inch sizes, so as long as you start out small, just like as if you're using a drill bit, start out the smallest and then slowly work your way up, continuing to flush and run water the entire time so that all the root bits are cut and then rinsed away. And I was able to completely clear this blockage of very thick roots. Some of them were about 3/8 or 1/2 inch thick in the pictures. So I'm going to show that now. So here is a side-by-side comparison of a blocked line. The left is the blocked line before I started cutting it. So the roots penetrated right here at this connection. This is likely just an O-ring push connection, so that they could always find that source of water and then penetrate it, and then they start going down the line. So we're looking into the line of where the water flows. So this root bunch actually goes in about another 2 to 3 feet past this point, filling the entire line. This is just food and poop particles and stuff that have collected all over it. And on the right is after using the smallest one, I think it's a 1-inch, that starter bit, and then a 1.5 and then a 2-inch cutter bit. Here's a little better view, so you can see that it bored right through cleanly. So basically a complete blockage. This is less than 1/2 inch of clearance right here before I cleared it, so obviously a huge blockage. And so here are pictures going further and further into the pipe. This is after going up to the 2-inch cutter bit. So I'm going to start out and go in, and you can already see that it was cutting the roots. A little further in, you can see that it very cleanly cut them. You can see right here, this is probably poop, but this is a huge root right here. This is a 1/2-inch root inside of all this other root mass, but you can see that it very cleanly cuts it. Right here is another big root right here, and this thing goes in the full like 2 or 3 feet, but it completely clears it, and it's cleaning the wall at the same time. And you can see all of these larger roots. These are 1/8-inch and larger roots that have been cut, and these little small ones, of course, it just can easily get through them. And all of these have been cut, and so it's very important to go extremely slowly. Push it in as soon as you feel any resistance. Just let it cut, let it sit for a while you're running the water, and then only push it in like 1 inch at a time. So it allows it to completely cut everything and rinse everything away before continuing. See, this is that giant root right here, but you can see the very round, clean profile from the cutter bit made its way through. And I was able to work my way up all the way to the 3-inch cutter bit. You can see this is the black part is a 4-inch pipe for sure. This is the city tap-in right here, the orange line. So it's between 3 and 4 inches as well. But I was able to completely cut this line. I think what I did is I got all the way up to 2 inches to 2.5 inch, I think. Then I poured some root killer down to really let it penetrate after I cleared and exposed all of those root ends. And then I came back 2 weeks later and then went all the way to the 3-inch, and there was 0 resistance. And I was able to completely clear the line after that. Then if you have issues with roots continuing to grow, you could just keep it at bay with some root killer every 6 months or so. In my case, I also cut down the trees on this property so that there were no more roots that could continue to grow, because once you kill the trees that are above it, nothing will penetrate this far down. That this pipe was about 9 feet underground, and the roots were still able to find it during a hard drought year. So keep that in mind if you have trees above your sewer pipes, that those roots will find that water source, and it'll likely happen to tap into the city connection or any joint that has fractured from the ground shifting over time.